We're standing by a narrow bridge over a canal encircling the Wisłoujście Fortress. We're going on a guided tour with a small group of Swedish and Polish archaeologists.
Thank you. Hi. Good morning.
Organizing the tour is archaeologist Karolina Cząskie-Słatkowska, one of the main instigators of the ArchaeoBolt project.
To the sea we have right now 1 to 2 kilometers, but in the past the coast was very close.
On the other side of the bridge is an arched gate in the fortress wall, the entrance. Right now we're waiting for our guide, Maciej Flis, the manager of the fortress. Maciej is slightly delayed, but will arrive any minute. You're listening to the 6th episode of The Road to Archaeotourism, a podcast series about the complementary possibilities of tourism and archaeology in the Baltic region. We focus on the activities of ArchaeoBolt, an investigative EU project started up to create a blueprint for archaeotourism in the South Baltic region. The project is a collaboration involving cultural institutions in 3 countries. Gdansk University is a project leader, and the partners are the Museum of Gdansk, Bornholm Museum, the University of Aarhus, and Lund University. Between 2018 and 2021, the ArchaeoBolt project operated at 5 archaeological test sites in Denmark, Sweden, and Poland. In our previous episodes, we looked at Iron Age settlements in Denmark and Sweden, and lastly at the Polish medieval stronghold of Wisłoujście. In this episode, we conclude our tour of the ArchaeoBolt sites with the Wisłoujście Fortress, one of the most famous historical monuments of Gdansk, but also an archaeological site that is largely unexplored. It's August 2021 and the fortress is closed to visitors, as it will be for the next 3 years. So visiting this place right now is a privilege. There are no archaeologists working on the premises these days for us to observe, as we have done in previous episodes. This episode will therefore be strictly a guided tour of a closed site. Now Maciej Flis arrives, the manager of the fortress and our guide today.
Hello, Maciej Flis, head of the department.
Accompanying him is Andrzej Gierszewski, a spokesperson for the Museum of Gdansk. Wisłoujście is a roughly quadrangular construction with one side flanking the river and the other 3 sides lined by a canal. Technically, a moat. The overall structure, a bridge, a gate and a tower, can only be seen from above. As we cross the bridge, the outer wall of the fortress rises in front of us. The gate is high and wide enough to ride a horse through hoisting a banner. If it was unobstructed, that is. But it's barred by an enormous, fortified double door. In this big door is a smaller, regular-sized door. This is the door that Maciej Flis opens to invite the group inside.
So let's walk inside.
Entering the portal, we come into a tunnel through the outermost part of the fortification, the bulwark. Each of the 4 corners of the bulwark has an arrowhead-shaped bastion that gives the fortress a star-like shape. This type of star-shaped construction is called a fort carré, after a French bastion that was the original prototype. As we emerge from the tunnel, we come to quite a big, roughly quadrangular area, partly paved with cobblestones. In the far end, by the riverside, The round tower rises about 20 meters into the air. This is the lighthouse tower that also served as a watchtower. Exiting the tunnel, the most peculiar aspect of the fortress comes into view. A row of three-storied houses built in a tight circle around the tower, functioning as a fortification. They look like old apartment houses, which is exactly what they are. They were officers' quarters. The houses have pointed gables on the top story, forming a row of triangles. The rear side of the houses actually forms another fortification, a round wall several meters higher than the rooftops themselves. The apparent circle of houses is actually just half a circle. The part facing the river has no houses, just a circular fortress wall. Over the ages, the fortress has been expanded, heavily damaged and rebuilt many times, with buildings being added and arranged around the central tower. Our guide tries to convey this very complicated story before we head to the top of the lighthouse tower.
Firstly, we need to know about the fortress Wisłoujście. It's not the only tower and the fort inside. Fortress is much bigger than we thought. The oldest part is lighthouse, built in 1482. Next part is a round wall around the tower called the crown, built 1562. The houses from the 17th century, officer houses. The fort carré, from the French it means the square exactly, from the first years of the 17th century. And the next parts are eastern bulwark outside the fort, 5 bastion fortification from the 17th century were built in the 18th and 19th century, and a place where I have never been before and until now, because it's very hard to reach that place. It's a small island in the shape of a triangle, also part of a fortification called the Ravelin.
This fortress has played a key role in the geopolitical power struggles of the Baltic region, as Andrzej Gieszewski explains.
It has a very deep, complex history. Not only from the medieval times, from 14th century, where there was no fortification here, but a Teutonic harbor office. It had Wisłoujście has its meaning also in in 20th century. It's filled with symbolism. It's filled with mysteries, also, that we will try to uncover in the next few upcoming years. This is why this place is also a Polish monument of history.
Before we start climbing the stone steps of the tower, we should make a short historical observation to put this tower in a context with the sites of our earlier episodes, sites from the Iron Age and the Viking Age. Do you remember the traveller Wulfstan mentioned in earlier episodes? He was a merchant who travelled in the South Baltic from the Viking town of Hylby in modern-day southern Denmark to a town called Trousseau. Trousseau was an important port of trade on the banks of another branch of the Vistula River, about 50 kilometers east of Gdansk. Wulfstan sailed past Gdansk to get to Trousseau, because at the time, Trousseau, not Gdansk, was the most important seaport in this part of the Baltic. Amber, fur and slaves were traded in Trousseau until the late 10th century, when the shores of Trousseau became mired with silt. This cut off the town from the sea and it lost its importance. Gdansk took its place. As we climb the steps, Maciej Flis responds to a remark by Swedish archaeologist Mats Roslund about a previous construction on this site.
Probably there has been some observation posts already before the 15th century.
Of course.
Because it's a perfect site to have supervise of the entrance to the Wisła.
Of course, and I wish to tell about it inside, because you will see. We are expecting that before construction, before 1482, that were built here, they are actually under the actual tower. We know about these fortifications, lighthouses, wooden structures from the documents of 15th century and before. So we are sure about it, that lighthouse existed here since probably 13th or 14th century. As long as existed the harbor of Gdansk. Because here Wisła was the one and only entrance to the Gdansk harbor for the ships.
The area around the Vistula Delta has been inhabited since the Stone Age. Early medieval settlements, like the Ovich stronghold, presented in our last episode, gave way to the larger power structure of the Polish state. Eastern Pomerania was probably conquered around 960 by Duke Mieszko I, who later founded the city of Gdansk in the 980s, following the decline of Trousseau. Duke Mieszko was the first ruler of the Piast dynasty that maintained its hold on power in Poland for the next 4 centuries or so. Mieszko I converted to Christianity, probably to avoid being forced to convert by German margraves. But one element of interest to archaeologists here are the remains of medieval churches on this site, as Karolina Książki explains.
One of the topics which is very interesting and in which we would like to investigate is question about parish. Because at Wisłoujście function a church and a parish which was called Sans Olaf. So you may see that this place had also a connotation with Scandinavia, especially with Norway and Sweden. And probably the question is where this church was located and if we have any remains of this parish. Right now at Wisłoujście there is next to the Fort Carré, which is the heart of the whole construction, we have a house, a building which belonged to police. And in the past, it was a priest house which belonged to the church, which was called Sans Olaf. Of course, it was a very late church. And we know that this parish has had very long traditions, and during the ages we had down there around 10 churches which were called by Sans Olaf. But because of the, let's say, interaction which were taking place at Wisłoujście, because this place was rebuilt many times, it was also attacked a few times, these churches were destroyed. So right now we're focused on finding the remains of this church.
In the early 13th century, Gdansk became an important trading centre under Duke Świętopełk II. After Świętopełk's death, complicated power struggles arose, and in 1309, one of the contestants for the control of Gdansk called for the aid of the Teutonic Knights. The Teutonic Order was a Catholic military society originally formed to aid Christians in pilgrimages to the Holy Land. Later, it became an active participant in Central European politics, and finally, an independent state. To make a long and very complicated story short and simple, the Teutonic Knights ruled over Gdansk for the next 150 years. And it was during the reign of the Teutonic Knights that the first version of the Wisłoujście Fortress was built. A structure of stone and wood with a pier that enabled the collection of toll taxes on goods coming into Gdansk. Even though the Teutonic Order maintained control in the area, many locals were unhappy with them, which led to a prolonged war, culminating in Casimir IV incorporating the area into the Kingdom of Poland. Maciej Flis explains.
Many things changed after the war between Teutonic Order and the Kingdom of Poland. During that war in 15th century, Gdansk took a side with the Kingdom of Poland against the Teutonic Order. Gdansk sent its own army for that war, and Polish King Kazimierz IV gave to the City Council of Gdańsk very important permission privilege for that city for next hundreds of years. The most important part of the privilege was that Gdańsk from 15th century become a main harbor of the Kingdom of Poland. Mm-hmm. And any ship, any trader coming into Gdańsk cannot trade with his goods without Gdańsk merchant. Mm.
These royal privileges consolidated economic power. They also enabled the construction of the tower, the top of which is being reached by our group of archaeologists.
So we are next to the lighthouse, built in 1482. Today it's much higher than in 15th century because the medieval tower was 6 or 8 meters maybe. One of the floors of that tower is exactly under the ground. After 16th century, this ground was raised up to build the crown.
In the 1570s, Gdansk was powerful enough to wage war against the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth to defend its special privileges.
It's very, very funny that the city could drive a war with the whole country and the king.
The war ended in a siege of the city. Although heavily outnumbered, the defenders of Gdansk held out for months.
It was between 6 and 8 months of siege. Most of the tower and the walls of crown were totally destroyed.
Then a peace treaty was signed. Gdansk was allowed to keep its special privileges in exchange for a large sum of money.
But after war, everything was rebuilt in very short time.
The rebuilt fortress was under siege numerous times in the following centuries, but proved to be almost impregnable. There's unfortunately no time to tell this complicated but fascinating story because we've reached the top of the lighthouse tower. The city of Gdansk lies before us.
So we are on the top of the tower, nearly 23 or 4 meters above the sea level. Not so high, but we can see that in 17th, 16th century, when these buildings around didn't exist, from that height we could see absolutely anyone that could reach the mouth of Vistula. Here landscape very much changed for next hundreds of years since the 16th century. The main changes were exactly here on the mouth of Vistula.
It's a very nice place to understand the landscape.
Yes.
Oh yes.
Astonishing that there are heights in that direction. I thought it was flat. But you can see there are some, not mountains, but heights going up there.
Yeah.
So from this place we're able to see, I would say, the whole Gdansk, technically speaking. Or almost, let's say, the biggest part of the city. So I think that is also the reason why this place was so important as an observation point.
Yeah, we should try to imagine the landscape around. There is no harbor, there is no woods.
So you had a very good sort of visibility of any activity in the city?
Absolutely. Next 80 or 100 kilometers were visible around the fortress in the 16th, 17th century.
With the advent of modern warfare, this fortress lost its strategical importance. but remarkably, the fortress played a part in the early days of the Second World War. Two kilometers north of Wisłoujście is a small, narrow peninsula, the Westerplatte, stretching into the Baltic Sea. In the 1930s, Westerplatte was the location of a Polish military depot, while the city itself was part of the Free City of Gdansk, a semi-autonomous city-state created after the First World War. The military depot covered 6 hectares of Polish territory, which, by 1939, had become a thorn in the side of the more prominent citizens of the city-state, who leaned towards Nazi Germany. The Germans claimed the whole region as part of Germany.
We think that Westerplatte was the first place hit by the Germans in the Second World War.
On the 1st of September 1939, German Marines landed in Wisłoujście and from there launched an attack on Westerplatte.
The battleship Schleswig-Holstein was holding troops that started the attack here from Wisłoujście. They embarked here at the fortress, and from this place they started attacking. Germans started attacking Westerplatte from here, from Wisłoujście.
Polish soldiers fought back, and against all odds, it took the Wehrmacht 7 days to conquer the depot.
So, if we would think that war began from this fact, it's Wisłoujście that was the first place in which Second World War began.
The restoration and subsequent research into Wisłoujście's history began after the war and continues to this day. A project such as Archaeobolt can be an essential part of this process, according to Andrzej Gierszewski.
Usually we work with University of Gdansk. They have a qualified staff which can be used to conduct archaeological research here on Wisłoujście Fortress. But from the other side, through Archaeobolt project, we also had a chance to cooperate with students from Sweden, from Denmark, which is surprisingly good, because whenever you have a fresh idea about how to conduct archaeological research, you have an opportunity to learn one from the other. This also provides you with extra knowledge that can be used to make things better, to make things work.
Unlike the other Archaeobolt sites, this one has never been abandoned. The historical events associated with the fortress are well documented. But when it comes to detailing what people actually did here, much remains hidden.
Nowadays, we have the opportunity to excavate deeper layers of ground. Nobody knows what treasures are hidden here. This is why Wisłoujście is so nice. It's still a mystery. You don't know what you will find here. Some parts of these 17 hectares have been already researched, but still, this is around 10%. We don't know what's hidden here, and it makes us happy to have the opportunity to be the first ones to discover the past.
The Road to Archaeotourism was written and produced by Jon Haller Steffensen and Lars Römer for the Archaeobelt project. Anja Lillemelum played the cello, and our narrator was Tim Hinman. Thank you for listening. The Archaeobolt project is co-financed by European Development Fund with the Interreg South Baltic Programme 2014 to 2020, and by the programme of the Minister of Science and Higher Education entitled PMW 2014 to 2020/2021/2.